If this video gets just 1 like, I'll make a video on the big 3 battle rifles of World War II. Gentlemen, welcome back to Administrative Results. Today we're going over the big 3 battle rifles of World War II, and there will be 1 honorable mention in here. Now at this point in the game, I have shot the big 3 battle rifles, and of course with the honorable mention, I haven't gotten my hands on a lot of the elusive variants of these guns, but nonetheless, I am excited to make this video. As someone that thoroughly enjoys World War II history, a big caveat is that I am no expert, I am just a dumb YouTuber that thoroughly enjoys this topic and these small arms that relate to it. Now the goal of this video is to go over the big 3 battle rifles, and we'll briefly cover our honorable mention, and we'll rank them a little bit, talk about some brief history and the shooter experience, and some other fun things. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Let's dive on in. Now to give some context, the world is looking down the barrel of another war. Maybe we don't realize for these people during the 1930s how big this war just will be. A second round of the war to end all wars. Spoiler, it's called the Second World War. And a lot of these countries are thinking about the armament. And I will say America is ahead of the game, baby. Everyone's really coming off the era of the bolt-action rifle, and America leads the charge with the M1 Garand. 8-round M-block clip of 30-06 with a long-stroke gas piston system. It's all American, wood and steel. God, dude, I just love the M1 Garand. She is purty. Now, America really, I will say, seems to have the utmost dominance in the small arm game of World War II with their M1 Garand. It's no secret their production just can't be touched. They don't have to worry about bombers or any other things messing with the production of their military rifles. And so the M1 Garand just gets absolutely manufactured at a massive scale. Now, the M1 carbine did get more produced than the M1 Garand, but that being said, I still would rather have an M1 Garand. Like, for whatever reason, I find the M1 Garand out of all of these to be the best of them. It is reliable, it gets the job done, the logistics and infrastructure for it are numerous and superior. It's just really hard to compete with. The M1 Garand, designed by John C. Garand, a Canadian immigrant, really shows just American prowess of manufacturing and leveraging machines to get a lot of the hard work done. Now, I did come across an interesting video from World War Wisdom, and he was talking about the use of the Springfield 1903s and the variants during World War II, where they weren't completely phased out and used a lot of times by rear echelon troops. And he even mentioned a funny anecdote about particular soldiers liking to use their Springfields even over the Garand. Now, in my mind, I heard that and I thought that was kind of silly, but he made a really interesting point about how they were really good for launching rifle grenades because the Springfield has a mechanism for cutting off the magazine. So if you wanted to have live ammunition still in the gun, but then single feed your blank rounds that you need to launch that rifle grenade, the Springfield actually made a lot of sense. And I thought that was a really cool detail, and I always want to shout out World War Wisdom whenever I can, so I thought I'd want to happily include that. That's probably one of the only rare circumstances I could see myself, if I was in World War II, as a GI, wanting to take a bolt-action rifle over the M1 Garand, is if I was just lobbing rifle grenades all the time. And if I wasn't, it would still be the BAR, the M1 Garand. So that does make sense. Now I'm hoping that one day, hell let loose, will get their head out of their and add rifle grenades, because I think that'll be really fun dynamic, and I think that could be a good balancing mechanic to maybe give it to where it's like you can have a Springfield introduce those, and then you can also use it with rifle grenades. I think that'd be really fun. I like that. I know I'm a nerd for this stuff. Now, the M1 Garand has a very long track record on the silver screen. A massive track record, one might say. Plenty of pop culture it has showed up in, and plenty more it will yet to be in. If you look it up on IMFDB, it is just a massive catalog list of appearances in movies, TV shows, video games, just about anything you can think of, the M1 Garand has done it all. It is quite the superstar when it comes to pop culture references. I feel like most folks, most average Joes, could very much recognize an M1 Garand. They may not be able to fully place the name. That's not really that hard for like getting the designator right when it comes to World War II American guns. It's like, hey, that's an M1. Hey, that's an M1. You can M1 everything and you'll still technically be right. Then of course there's always a different designator where it's like, that's the M1A1 or that's the M1A4. And it's like, sometimes I even get lost in the sauce of which like designator it is. I'm like, wait, is that an M1A4E1? Like, you know what I mean? There's so many different designators added on to the World War II guns. I love it. I think it's fun. And the guys that are my catalogs, my walking thesauruses. Walking thesauri, is that right? My walking encyclopedias. There we go, that's the right word for it. I appreciate you guys for knowing all of that info. Hell of a spot to bleed out. Now, to me, there's another interesting aspect is, of course, the human connection, and I've talked about this a lot, but running a Garand in kit and getting a picture for how it feels is a really cool thing to do to me because it helps paint the picture. Like you watch Band of Brothers, you watch the Pacific, you see those guys running around as ground pounders with their rifles, and you're like, man, what would that be like running around them on Garand with their web gear and all that kit? Now you get a better picture, at least I did. Personally, I have never had to use an M1 Garand in anger, and technically, thankfully, I guess. I got 2 krauts over here. I got 1 kraut over here. But whenever I do use an M1 Garand, it's mainly going to be on the digital space of warfare. Games like Battlefield franchises, Call of Duty, and of course one of my favorite shooters, Hell Let Loose. I know Squad 44 exists. Thank you. I appreciate you. I am stuck in Hell Let Loose because of my sunk cost fallacy of having too much time into it. Now I will say, in a question that I will pose, and I think that will be interesting throughout this video, a weapon like the M1 Garand is a massive game changer, or is it? If we really think about the grand scale of World War II, because I think as gun guys, we really do focus a lot on the small firearms aspect of, say, a much more massive conflict. For instance, what I'm kind of getting at is if we took the M1 Garand and say just deleted it, you can have all the other small arms, but now the M1 Garand doesn't exist and you only have the Springfield bolt-action rifle. Would those gunfights be as dominant in World War II, and what would that look like on a grand scale? I would wager, given the logistics, given the other weaponry, given everything else that the United States has access to, including, I don't know, nuclear bombs, I think the outcome would still be very similar. I think there would just be a few different tweaks and there would be just some different instances of happenings. I think on the small microcosm level, the M1 Garand is a massive game changer when you're going up against, Arasakas and you're going up against, K98Ks. Yes, the M1 Garand is going to be dominant, but on a bigger picture, there is so much other things on a massive warfare scale that just dominate the enemy, like you have these strategic, World War II era bombers, these massive bombing formations just absolutely obliterating your logistical supply chain, and at a certain point, it's like they almost become just uncontested, like you just can't touch them. So it's like, yeah, you have this small arm, and I think when you shrink it down to the micro level, it's of course a massive deal, but on the grandeur scale of warfare, it's like, of course, logistics is much more important. Now, in a weird way, I wish there was more variants of the M1 Garand that showed up during World War II. I wish the US got more, almost German with it, just always trying to make some wonder weapon or implement new upgrades, but the Americans could actually pull it off, if that makes sense. For instance, I wish there was more examples of M1 Garand tankers being used, and then there would be troops being like, okay, yeah, given the circumstances of this fighting, the M1 Garand tanker did just great because it was a little bit more condensed, fighting in more close settings. Or there was examples of them speed running the M1 Garand C, or the M1C I should say. You get to see more examples of a designated marksman / sniper rifle being used that is the M1 Garand platform. I think that would have been cool, and on top of, because technically you don't really need the stock on an M1 Garand, it's good for some storage, but seeing a more foldable paratrooper option, even though those folding stocks back in the day just weren't that great. I think that would have been cool in kind of a gamey kind of way for history, but alas, we don't really get that too much. And of course, seeing the advent of the tactical box magazine showing up. I think that'd be a fun alternate history, but we don't really get to see that unfold on a massive scale, mainly just experimental stuff. Now, of course, the M1 Garand is To me, top notch. Now, you may say, admin, it holds 2 less rounds than its buddies. Its buddies have detachable box magazines, and to that I say, N-block clip. The N-block clip is probably one of the best clips ever made. It is contained, it is easy to load, unlike a stripper clip where no matter what stripper clip I use, I've seemed to always have an issue where it's like trying to really thoroughly get those rounds in the gun. Yeah, you have the option where you can kind of top off a lot easier than say trying to top off with an M1 Garand. But to me, it's like, dude, how fast you can just get another N block in the M1 Garand as opposed to say trying to do an awkward magazine reload with those other two. And granted, the SVT-40's magazine reload is probably going to be the smoother one over the Gewehr 43. The Gewehr 43, you kind of have to hold that latch and then rock it out all the way, where that SVT-40, you get that latch and you can just rock it out. So it seems like magazines, I've heard some accounts where it's like, you know, soldiers had multiple magazines for the Gewehr 43, or soldiers they only had like 1 magazine for the SVT-40, they just use strippers. It's probably all over the place. It's nice to just have like in-block clips on you, 8 at a time, as opposed to having to load 5. Because I was loading 5 with, say, the Gewehr 43 yesterday, and once you load 5, the magazine's loaded, so the gun thinks it's good to go, and you only have 5 in the mag. So there's that, unless I'm doing something wrong mechanically, which could be a possibility because I am not a total expert on that platform. I am just an admirer. As far as the shooter experience goes with the M1 Garand, I will say going from like 0 to passable in the sense of becoming familiar with the weapon, there was a little bit of a learning curve. Like I remember trying to figure out, okay, like takedown of the M1 Garand, you know, disassembly of it, cleaning of it, figuring out all the proper mechanisms that you need to grease, and there's plenty of resources out there in our modern day and age to really get a grasp of it. So that's not necessarily the hard part. There is some weird little, you know, unfamiliarities of the takedown system of the M1 Garand if you're very much a modern shooter where all you know is the AR-15. Like just about, like the AR-15 to me, you know, like I had older brothers and growing up, they taught me how to disassemble and assemble an AR-15 bolt carrier group, and then they would even make me do it blindfolded. So it's like at a certain point, it just becomes like an institutional knowledge within your brain, and learning any new platform is always like a little bit foreign. So there's a curve, but it's not too bad in the grand scheme of things. Shootability wise, the gun's actually pretty easy to pick up. Not a lot going on. You got your charging handle, your safety, and that's, well, and your trigger, and even the disassembly is pretty quick. If you hand an M1 to someone that's like heard of it and they've heard of Garand Thumb, not of course the YouTuber Garand Thumb, but the actual Garand Thumb that you get, then they may be a little like hesitant and scared and worried about getting their thumb stuck in it, but it's really not that big of a deal, and you really have to like jam your thumb in there to even have a potential of getting Garand Thumb. Like once you find the sweet spot, you just send that bolt home and you're good to go. The recoil impulse on the Garand, it's really hard to differentiate them, like which one's truly the best, and I will say it may be a toss-up between the M1 Garand and the Gewehr 43. The SVT-40 to me was by far the worst recoil impulse. Very violent, so at least it's probably gonna run when it does run. The irons on the M1 Garand, in my opinion, are the best of all the other battle rifles on here. And honestly, I'll get to the honorable mention and then we can talk about it more there, but I do think they are the best, and we would see those carried over to the M14 platform. And I think those irons are actually just phenomenal. You have your windage elevation and they are pretty slick. The gun is robust. It feels like a proper American horsepower engineered firearm. 8 rounds of 30-06 in a time when the average height and weight of a dude was like 5'6" to 5'8", $110 to $150. That is insane to be sending an elk hunting cartridge downrange at the stature of your combatant. That is to me always wild to think about, considering how small our cartridges have developed because of the knowledge that we've learned. A fun thing about the M1 Garand is it's good for my California gun owners, I think. There's no assault weapon features or whatever the hell it is you guys have to deal with. I'm so sorry. One thing I do like about the M1 Garand is that the Japanese try to copy it for themselves because they're like, dang dude, these freaking Marines and GIs are jacking us up with these M1 Garands. They're just absolutely ruining our bonsai charges. I mean, not to mention all the other belt-fed and semi-automatic / other automatic weapons in a American platoon. That being said, like I love the fact that they tried to copy it and rechamber it in 7.7 Arasaka, like their cartridge and everything. They couldn't pull it off, and like when America won, they did come across like a rare little batch of them, and I think they were even going for like a crazy resale on the American market. So if you do have one, that's really cool. More power to you, because that gun's extremely rare. And of course, the best thing about the M1 Garand would be that ever so delicious ping. Schnell! Schnell! Kommen Sie schnell! Hey there, fellas. This video is sponsored by Americana Pipe Dream Apparel. Fantastic young Zoomers getting after the milsurp space and arena. You like night vision. You like knives. You like military manuals. You like e-bikes, the newfangled technology of bicycles powered by electricity. Then you, fella, will like Americana Pipe Dream Apparel. Link in the description down below. Hey, pal. You ever hear of Optics Planet? The optics sponsor of Administrative Results? Geez, I could really use a good pair of glass around here. Hopefully Optics Planet can help a GI out. This just in. Badlands Munitions, a local Arizona company supplying our boys with the best ammunition possible. Real quick, Badlands doesn't make any 30-06 or 8mm Mauser or 7.62x54R. But what they do make is quality. And of course, a big thank you to Badlands. I like my boys over there a lot. Where is everybody? Now up next on the list we have the Gewehr 43, Germany's super battle rifle that's gonna win them the war. Psych. It really does go back to the Germans chasing every wonder weapon that they think will win them the war because of it's just cool. In a weird way, I do appreciate the Germans for doing this because it makes for a really fun historical analysis of weapons technology. That being said, when it comes to like the tabletop, turn-based strategy game, they're just constantly shooting themselves in the foot. Like for instance, I've been playing a lot of Empire Total War lately, and you develop your technology tree as you go on, and you can really maximize the effectiveness of certain things. Like I just absolutely sped ran, because I was playing as a British. I sped run. I did the speed run on my British naval military technology tree so I could just absolutely dominate the trade lanes, and then that would give me time to create an ample ground army as I blockade any enemy that I desire. What the Germans feel like they were doing was just jumping around all the technology trees and not really nailing down their logistical supply lines of what was tried and true. Yeah, you lose an edge because you don't have a semi-automatic battle rifle, but you're also getting jacked up because your King Tiger 2 is getting stuck in the mud and running out of gas. What was the point of all that?
Because it's so much fun, Chan. Get it?
Now with a lot of these guns on here, we do have their predecessors, M1 Garand having their earlier models, you have the earlier models of the SD40, earlier models of the Gewehr 43. The Gewehr 41 has like that built-in bolt action. I actually do like that a lot. I think that's a funny little feature, and it's kind of quirky product of its time, where it's like a redundancy where they're like, all right, this has to work in a bolt action setting. But in my head, I'm like, wait, can't you just cycle the bolt already if it's like just not operating, but you have to have the bolt action to really send it home? I don't know. I'm sure you get more leverage, of course, with the bolt action, but I thought that was interesting. And of course, they did have their troubles with the Gewehr 43. Everyone knows about how they weren't as reliable. Like the use of slave labor leading to the decline in quality of these guns, and it could be a toss-up. I mean, think about it. If you're like a German, soldier, hopefully you got away to Argentina. I mean, think about it. If you're like a German soldier at that point in time, the Gewehr 43 is coming around, there's some turning point events in the war, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, if you somehow get your hands on a Gewehr 43, you may not know it, but there could be a big toss-up down the road as the reputation kind of gets spread around throughout your military of, hey, this thing's kind of a toss-up. They beat themselves apart and/or they just don't work at all. That could lead to a massive decline in confidence, just on a morale level where you're just really worried about like, okay, life or death situation, is my gun gonna work? And of course, with the Gewehr 41s, they did steal, the design of like the SVT-40s that they were coming across in the early days of the war on the Eastern Front. So I do find that interesting. Now, I will say, and I want to give massive props to the Gewehr 43 for its aesthetics alone. When it has that German glass on it, when it has its overall look, hell, even when it has some of those 20-rounders in the gun, I dare say the Gewehr 43 objectively may look the best. Does it run the best? Hell no. Does it look the dang coolest? It's tough because I, as an American, love the M1 Garand, but it's really hard to have that toss-up of aesthetics with the look of the Gewehr 43. Fellas, there's two wolves inside of you. One of them simps for the M1 Garand, the other wishes the Gewehr 43 could actually work. A funny personal story, one of the first times I was shooting and filming with a Gewehr 43, it was a while ago, my buddy that was letting me borrow it, Jordan, was like, yeah dude, just go buck wild, shoot it, run it, it's a tool, it's supposed to be ran, and I was like, okay, cool. Then doing all the shooting, and I realized, hey man, did you ever like get a shooter's kit in this thing? And it's like a $200 some odd piece of kit that goes in the Gewehr 43. It's like a modern invention to help them not just beat themselves apart. He's like, nah. I was like, dang, dude. I think he later got a shooter's kit to make the gun have some more survivability because, these are expensive kind of collector piece items when they are in good condition. But I thought that was a funny example. And of course, props to Jordan for just letting me abuse his, G43. The Gewehr 43, as far as the silver screen goes, I will say not as prevalent as the M1 Garand. And for the rest of the video, that may be a slight trend. The SVT40 has a little bit more, but as far as the Gewehr 43 goes, probably a bit more popular in video games. Just about any World War II shooter, you're going to get the option of the Gewehr 43, and it is kind of the gun that is used to leverage the firepower disparity for the general infantry dude. Now, what I mean by that is like, just look at, yet again, Hell Let Loose, it's going to come up again, I don't care, sue me. Look at Hell Let Loose, right? Like the balancing of the game, because so much of it is just like platoon on platoon size combat, you don't have the strict discipline of, say, an actual military operation because it's a lot of people running around with their heads cut off. You're trying to give the average player a chance to have a more leveled playing field. Like if you play that game and you're running around as a German with a K98 and you come across an American with an M1 Garand, like both of you were going on the flank and ran into each other, you have like one shot to really land on that GI with his M1 Garand before he schwacks you with the second follow-up shot if he misses. It'd be interesting like in the game if like you're shooting it enough, the gun just breaks apart and you have to go find like a K98. That'd also be really frustrating. Don't do that. I'm trying to play my PTSD simulator after a long day of making YouTube videos. So I'm trying to play my Hell Simulator after a long day of Hell Simulator. That's unfair. I love this job. There's a funny scene in Masters of the Air, which is like the bomber version of Band of Brothers, but there's a German in a guard tower at one of these like POW camps that's shooting his K98 like it's a semi-automatic rifle. I couldn't unsee it. But there's really not a good like presence of a Gewehr 43. I'm talking like an action shot off the top of my head. I'm sure it's out there. You guys can bring it up in the comment section down below. Oh, I forgot to put my hat on. Now, as far as the shooting experience of the Gewehr 43 goes in modern times, right, I feel like a shooter's kit would have to be a must to preserve the longevity of your investment of that Gewehr 43. There's always going to be the risk of, did you get like a slave labor gun? And that being said, I also want to caveat, I definitely am not in the weeds of the fine-tuned details for my collectors that do go after these Gewehr 43s or K43s. If you're going down that rabbit hole, of course, as usual, I'd highly recommend way more research. In theory, it would be a lot more enjoyable if you had spare magazines. With the setup that I tried with like kit, I was mainly had like the K98 pouches. If you had maybe more dedicated Gewehr 43 magazine pouches with spare mags, I could see that experience being way better than trying to top off the reload. It is nice having a detachable magazine, but if you don't have that, you're pretty much just running like a semi-automatic gun that you have to feed your stripper clips into. And when you do feed your first 5 into, the gun thinks it's good to go, so you only have 5 on hand, unless you had to like maybe hold the bolt open weirdly, feed it again. So maybe I'm missing something, but that was like my experience when I topped off a Gewehr 43 with the 5, and then the bolt would drop, and it's like, wait, I still need 5 more rounds in there to get the tactical advantage. No! Technically, besides the honorable mention gun, I want to say the Gewehr 43 will be the most expensive on the list. I want to say you can get the SVT40 for cheaper, but a good minty Gewehr 43 may run you a pretty penny, especially compared to like the M1 Garand, which there is a plethora of, and if a boomer's charging way more money than they should be, just hunt around and find a better deal. It's like, I'm not paying $5 grand for your M1 Garand, dude. Get out of here. Comrade, I need you to make propaganda wheel of USSR military might, but leave out any military help from the West. Next up, the SVT-40. The might of Soviet Russia knows no bounds. Are my tankies in the chat yet? The political compass on this video should be fascinating. General consensus speed run. SVT-40 performed better than Gewehr 43. Wow. Now I will say there was not the wide adoption of the SVT-40 that perhaps members in the Red Army, if they survived getting purged, would have liked to see. Taking his hat off. Production numbers, of course, outpaced the Gewehr 43, but I don't think they could really touch what the M1 Garand would be. The gun really kind of got phased out in favor of the Mosin Nagant and all its different variants. I really do wish in a wargamey kind of way that we would see the Gewehr 43 and SVT-40 face off in a much more aggressive head-to-head on the Eastern Front. You know, they just weren't as prevalent as either side wanted them to be. Now, of course, the SVT-40 was a very prized weapon to capture for German forces. Plenty of photos of Germans with Russian captured weapons, you know, PPSH-41 and of course the SVT-40 in their propaganda reels. Speaking of the silver screen, SVT-40 has quite the track record in Russian cinema, showing up in plenty of their films. Yet again, a lot of popularity with the Russian guns showing up in just about all those video games that you can imagine when relevant. Weirdly enough, we never got an Eastern Front style setting in Battlefield 5. And of course, Battlefield 5 has its flaws I'm very well aware of, but at the time of playing it, I did enjoy it, and I wish there would have been an Eastern Front campaign. Where we do get to see it in action, as you guessed it.
Doom Eternal.
Hell Let Loose. That gun in Hell Let Loose does a good job of absolutely just folding anybody that you come across with it. And I will say the recoil feels pretty much stout in the game as it does in real life. Of the big three, I will say the SVT-40, off the top of my head, felt like it recoiled the most, with the Garand feeling the softest almost. Like, this is what's coming at me in my head. Now, as far as a ranking goes for the SVT-40, and I realize I forgot to rank the Gewehr 43, but of course, SVT-40, I would give it a B tier. Like, it's not necessarily in the A tier, surely not in the S tier. It wasn't implemented enough. The reputation for reliability isn't as notorious. They just weren't as widely used in general. And of course, the Gewehr 43, I would give it a ranking in the C tier category, where it's very much a, hey Germany, you tried kind of vibe. G43 is a C tier, SVT-40 is a B tier, M1 Garand, S tier. USA! 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 Now, if you were curious what it sounds like to get shot at by each of these weapons, you may observe this example now. Now lastly, we get to the honorable mention firearm. It is a gun that I think is very cool, arguably the most expensive to collect now on the list. Saw limited use in World War II, and it was the competitor to the M1 Garand, but would not take over, and that would be the M1941 Johnson rifle. And of course, most of the guns like the SVT-40, Gewehr 43, 1941 Johnson are all thanks to Nick, a dear friend of the channel, for helping source these firearms to show off to you guys, so everyone round of applause and say thank you, Nick. The 1941 Johnson, a very unique design, and it looks like a massive steampunk style gun, and it does fit the era appropriately. Personally, I think it's cool. I dislike that the bayonet cannot be as robust due to the whole mechanism of the barrel, and so you have a much thinner bayonet. That being said, the rotary magazine is unique, but also kind of weird. Personally, I am an M1 Garand kind of guy. I think the Johnson is cool. I think the look of the Marines on Guadalcanal with all the different variants of Johnson weapons that they have is sick. I love that historical little like Easter egg. It's just so tasty. That scratches the itch for what I wish there could have been for more M1 Garand variants being out in the wild during World War II. And of course, it still leaves me wanting more in terms of M1 Garand variants. But it's wonderful to see. The ability to top off either singular rounds and of course 5-round stripper clips I think is a fun feature, but I think the 8-round M-block clip is far superior. It's just, as far as speed goes, having shot got both. You can reload an M1 Garand extremely fast. I always seem to have issues with stripper clips, like it's a me thing probably, but like the M-block clip just crushes any stripper clip of a 5-round variety out of the water. Really the most popular thing that the M1941 Johnson was in as far as silver screen time goes would be like a Captain America movie. Now it does show up in video games like Battlefield 5, but it's really not that well known in the general zeitgeist. It has to stand up to the absolute Goliath that is the M1 Garand. I mean, overall, the M1941 Johnson, I think, is a cool concept along with his other firearms, but he could just not pull it off in getting those government contracts to really get mass production going. That's how it goes, fellas. Can't win them all. Okay, so ranking for the Johnson, how do we rank it? It's really tough to say. You don't have a wide number of usage. It's a very nichely used weapon in the war. Where it does show up, it looks very cool. I believe it's like the Marine paratroopers that use it on Guadalcanal in the Bougainville campaign. It's tough because as far as logistics go, it gets pretty much crushed by everything else. Aesthetics, it's definitely very different. I will say there was mixed reports of the Marines that use it from what I was reading, where it's like either like, yeah, I was on par with the M1 Garand, or oh, they like to use it more. Kind of hard to say. I think if we're staying true to the chart, we kind of got to put it in the C tier, where it looks cool, but just the actual overall impact in the war as far as the small arms go, very minimal. And that's a generous ranking as far as impact goes, so I may get flamed for that in the comment section down below. YouTube, right? Right, fellas? In an artistic way, each one of these rifles does properly represent the country they are from. For example, the M1 Garand is rugged and reliable, with a strong logistical track record and used to great effect. The SVT-40, it kind of has that communist ambition where it wants to be the top dog, but it just quite can't pull it off due to its own self and logistics and losing them in mass, and just wasn't feasible. I will say it is effective, but ultimately not plausible. Like communism. And of course there is the Gewehr 43. Like fascism, it has the best aesthetic, but when you peel back the surface under the hood, it really can't support its own logistical weight and is undermined by the people that you oppress. And with the M1941 Johnson, it's kind of like innovative, product of a free market, competition to the current thing. I would say it's very reminiscent of capitalism. I think it makes sense. The political compass on full display, fellas. Now, of course, I've wanted to make this video for a bit. I thoroughly enjoy the battle rifles of World War II. I enjoy battle rifles in general, but these guns did directly shape the world that we live in today on a massive level. Now, Ian McCollum of Forgotten Weapons did beat me to the punch a little bit, but I'm my own man, and I wanted to cover this topic for myself with my own interpretation. I do agree with him on his ranking, though. He has a pretty good solid ranking of the video, and of course, he always has his intelligent input that I thoroughly enjoy. I'd always encourage you to go check out his video too. I would say my ranking isn't too controversial. I mean, if I was dropped back in time, I would of course take the M1 Garand over all of them. I would take the SVT-40 if I was in a pinch over the Mosin, or say if I was a German, I'd rather have that than the Kar 98. And the Gewehr 43 could be better than just a regular K98 if that was my only option, and God forbid it blows up in my face. That would be the worst outcome possible. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section down below what would be your go-to rifle of World War II. Gentlemen, I got nothing else for you. As always, I'll catch you on the flip. Man, do I love the M1 Garand. Pingin'!